Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to wait a couple of minutes here to have everyone form into the webinar. So stay tight and we'll let you know once we commence. Thank you so much for your patience. For those of you just joining in, we're going to wait about 1 or 2 more minutes to make sure we have the webinar at full occupancy before we start. So we appreciate your patience in advance and we'll let you know once we start. Well, while we're waiting for the rest to connect here, because we're going to be sending out, I think, another reminder, we just want to give an overview of what we have in store today. We're going to be speaking about the next generation of payment experiences, what the pandemic has done in terms of effects, and what it will mean post-pandemic to actually go ahead and see the necessities of the market given certain data we'll be presenting today. So while we wait, Mirko, Andre, I don't know if you guys want to, we can have a little bit of a chat before we get started officially. I'm sure you guys are very excited to present everything we have today for the webinar. I know that we've been preparing everything to have a great webinar. So let's see here. I think we should get started in about
Yes,
a minute.
I mean, we can use this time to start to thank the people that are actually joining us to this webinar. I'm checking the the people connected, and it's quite amazing that we have people from different countries, different continents. So, thank you very much for all of you. We are very happy to having you here today, joining us to this webinar.
It's amazing. We have people from all over the world, from South America, from Africa, from Europe, from the US. So it's truly an international forum that we've created here. Um, as I said, we're going to be speaking today on some views and topics about next gen payment experiences, how we've gone from a world where cash is king to a more cashless society. So, if it's okay with both of you, Mirko, Andre, we can go ahead and get started. It's 5 past already. Is that okay with both of you?
Perfect.
Yes, and I think it's okay. Let's start.
Fantastic. Well, once again, good morning, good afternoon, depending where all of you are. We want to thank you for your time today to tuning in to our webinar. This is our first official webinar, and it's between BYSPay and Swipe. We are celebrating this new partnership. And with that, we are introducing some views into this next gen payment experience. And what we mean by that is understanding where we are given the pandemic and looking a little bit into the future in the next couple of years and even the next decade. So to start here, I'd like to introduce Mirko Kocina, who is the CEO of BYSPay, as well as Andre Lavstam, who's the CEO of Swipe. Mirko, before you explain, my name is Sean McCroskey. I'm going to be the moderator. I'm the commercial director at BYSPay. Mirko, can you tell us a little bit about BYSPay as a company?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Sean. Again, hi to everyone who has joined us to this webinar. We are glad for having you here today. As you say, Sean, I'm CEO at BYSPay. BYSPay is a fintech company expert on payment methods for issuing cards, for acquiring, and also for processing. So we have different products and solutions across the whole spectrum of payment. We are an international company. We are based in France, Luxembourg, Latin America, in Chile, and Uruguay. Well, this is why today we are here to talk about these new payment trends, and especially how the industry has changed after COVID.
Perfect. And Andre, could you tell us a little bit about Swipe?
Absolutely. First of all, hello to everyone, and Mirko and Sean, thanks for having me on this call. So I'm the CEO of Swipe, which is a biometric fintech company. We have been pioneering the next generation contactless experience with biometric payment cards for many, many years. We are a Norwegian-based company with a global footprint. We have offices from Colorado Springs in the west to Singapore in the east. And our mission is to make convenience safe and secure by combining the convenience of contactless payment with the security and also safety of biometrics. So a biometric payment card looks a little bit like this, and we'll get back to that later on. We have a global network of partners, both card manufacturers and processors and service providers to the financial industry, and we're delighted to be partnering also with BYSPay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for participating today. So, the first thing we want to go over a little bit is exactly these trends. When we talk about going from a cash society where cash is very strong to a cashless society where other mediums of payments are at the forefront. Mirko, can you explain a little bit an insight in terms of how this progression is seen in the next couple of years?
Yes, actually, well, we need to recognize that the payment card had been part of this ecosystem since long time ago. So let's say that the card is not something that is new per se. However, after COVID, uh, the card as a product had changed a lot. And actually, it has been quite amazing because it's true that COVID bring us a lot of problem, and it was actually quite complicated, quite sad from the healthcare point of view. I mean, a lot of people have suffered. They also this generate a challenge, not just from the healthcare sector, but also in general in technology. And payment it was part of it because we were used to, we were using electronic payment methods in the past. However, with COVID, this way to pay has been busted. Why? Because cash is basically something that people touch, and this can transmit virus. So this forced in some way to change the way to see the payment methods, and now we have another reality. So because this context that actually we noted in Europe, there were a lot of merchants that they were not comfortable accepting cash. So even people that wasn't so comfortable paying with electronic payment method, they decide to start to use it because they have had some issues at the moment to pay. So in the beginning, let's say that when COVID started, we have seen this amazing improve in the usage of electronic payment methods. And if we see actually the statistic in all the continents, in the end, I mean, the conclusion is that the card is still, for by far, the most used electronic payment method. And with COVID, the usage of the payment card had this increased even more than the one we have it. Actually, I always give this example, like a country like Germany, that they were very into cash. Actually, they were using a lot the cash as the main payment method. And today we have seen that in Germany, now they are much more focused, or they are migrating for electronic payments, like using payment card with contactless rather than the cash. And this is a trend that we can see in Europe, in North America, and also in Latin America. And the statistics show that.
And Andre, coming obviously from Swipe, where you guys offer a payment card, what do you see in terms of these numbers? How do you interpret these findings as to what Mirko was speaking about?
Well, I totally agree with what Mirko said. Payment cards are by far the preferred means of payment at the point of sale in almost all geographies in the world. And if you think about Europe, for example, it constitutes more than 65% of all payments, and it is completely dominant. Actually, if you think about all the non-cash payments, according to fresh data from the Smart Payment Association, nearly 90% of all non-cash consumer payments at the point of sale were using cards in physical stores. And on top of that, cards are also critical for other forms of payment. For example, accessing cash in ATMs. And it's actually also the basis for between 40 to 60% of all online payments. So we're seeing card payments growing, and they will be growing over the next decade or even decades. There's been a lot of discussion around digital wallets and mobile payment, but in reality, cards will still be king for a very long time. And I also believe that all these payment forms will live side by side. Old habits are hard to break, so to say.
Yeah, and that's very interesting given what we see here, the trend that has only been accelerated by the pandemic. And it's hard to negate hard numbers. And as we can see, there are specific projections where we're talking about a biometric increase in card issuance specifically. Mirko, can you talk a little bit about how we see this trend from 2018 to the future going into 2023 of this increase?
Yes, actually, I totally agree with Andre that it's true that now in 2000, I mean, in 2021, we talk a lot about the new way to pay. There's a lot of technology around that are very, 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 let's say, sexy and very shiny. However, the statistic and the forecast are clear. Payment card the issuance of the payment card in the next year will increase in 32%. So in 2030, we should have 32.5% more cars than today. And this figure means that billion of cars, so it's an increment of billions of cars. Really, it's an amount that we cannot avoid it. I mean, it's evident. But again, I mean, as Andres say, doesn't mean that we continue the increase of the issue of payment card. doesn't mean the other electronic method will not exist. I mean, in the end, we will find this balance where the payment card will still be the most predominant payment method. And this is basically also because, as also Andrea say, habits are different to break. And today, the payment method, the digital payment method, were much used and most, let's say, a standard for our culture are the payment card. I mean, people know how to use it. They feel comfortable with it. So switch from this method to another one, relying in other mechanism, in other technology, in other devices, will be very difficult to adopt. So this will take a lot of time. So this is why we expect that in the next year, the increase of card issuing will be actually quite big, much more than what we were thinking before COVID. This is the amazing thing. I mean, before COVID, we have an industry that was quite of, let's say, stabilized. So the figure was a little bit the same. We noted an increase, of course. However, now we can see that COVID rocketed the evolution of the adoption of the usage of payment cards.
Correct. And if we specifically look and we tune into a little bit more, what specific cards are seeing this uptick? It's contactless cards, and there's very good reasons for this. Andre, can you speak a little bit as to why we see an increase in contactless cards as a form of payment for consumers?
Yeah, I mean, contactless cards, of course, brought a lot of convenience already from their launch in 2007 by Barclays, and they were quickly embraced by consumers for the the speed of and ease of use and so on. But now with COVID-19, this has taken on a completely new dimension, and that is what is behind the acceleration in contactless usage. The focus on safety has been dramatically elevated from COVID-19. In fact, we have consumer research that shows that, for example, in the UK, 83% of consumers say that they are worried about touching shared surfaces. And the PIN pad on a payment terminal is one of the most infected places you can actually touch. So therefore, contactless is extremely compelling to consumers. On top of that, there has also been a large increase in the transaction caps. They have been raised almost all over the world, and this has also meant that contactless payment cards have been even more accessible and even more used. So I think those are the drivers behind it. So it's like you say in the slide here, it's both health, security, and safety that comes on top of the convenience. That's the basis for contactless growth.
Exactly. And what's so important when we talk about the needs that the market has given these trends, it's important to understand that we have to take an integral approach. Not one driver on its own will push this trend that we're seeing. And that's why we talk about not only a contactless payment method that has this security given the health pandemic that we're living right now, but it's important to meet the customer exactly where they are. And that's where this instantaneous issuance that we talk about is so important, and it's part of the forefront, because these four pillars that we see today that allow us to meet the customer's expectations is the instantaneity of the issuance, a contactless form that goes a little bit above and beyond what we see today in the market through secure means, because as we know, PIN is what we use today, but as people don't want to have that contact, as you say, Andre, with the terminal because of this health pandemic that we're going through, people are looking for new avenues to have that security in their card. And all this goes around the cashless trends that we see that, of course, the pandemic has accelerated, but would have happened either way. We're just seeing this push much quicker. And so when we talk about instant issuance, we have to understand there's specific benefits that go to this. Mirko, can you speak about why it's so important to integrate this into this new way of introducing cards to the end consumer?
Yes, actually, again, we're in 2021, so now the customers are a little bit different. The banking industry is facing a new kind of customer. The millennials are changing a little bit the way of how banking has been interacting with our customer. So now our customers are looking for instant services. I mean, it's not just for the cars in general. So we cannot think that the car as a product can take long time to arrive to the customer, especially now that in different regions, we can see that the banks are having a lot of competitors. And now we have neobanks that they're having a completely different approach. So in some way, the traditional banks, they need to actually speed up the way to offer their product and try to be more instantaneously. So actually, and we have our own study that reflects that perfectly. I mean, today, for example, we know that customers that are using just banks that are using just central issuance, that means that they are taking, in average, about 5 days to send the car. In the end, I mean, because these 5 days, the probability that this car will be activated is in between the 60 and 70%. So, I mean, the other approach seen in this statistic is basically between 30 and 40% of the car will be lost. So, car that will never be activated and be used. With instant issuance, we have a 100% of activation rate because we are giving the car instantaneously and we let the customer to activate the car right now at the place where we are printing the car. And also this brings another very interesting statistic because also it's very important the car usage. I mean, it is very important the car finally is activated, because if it's not activated, it's completely useless. But after the car is activated, what the banks want is that the car start to make transactions. So the car usage is very important. And the customer experience having an installation services also shows that this car will increase the usage during the first month in 32%. Though it's actually quite incredible how just changing a little bit the customer experience can change the whole life cycle of the product, because people have a different approach at the moment that use the product. So let's say that basically between 5 days to 5 minutes that take the whole onboarding and car personalization, you will change the return of the investment on your product from 100% from 60% of activation to 100% activation, and also an increase of the usage on 32%. So,
I mean, to take, just like you say, Miracle, to take advantage of these specific trends to better the experience of the customer and give them the only tangible product that today the bank offers, which is a card in their hands, where a card that is issued is 100% activated, is really game changing. And that goes a little bit into this topic that we've been seeing, which is the acceleration that has come given this pandemic, where these trends have just gone that much faster. Andre, can you speak about why it's so important to look at this pandemic and how it's affected the year-over-year changes in this industry?
Well, I mean, as we have talked about, the elevated focus on safety and hygiene is what has been behind it, mostly. And then, as I say, on top of that, the transaction limits, which have been increased, which of course also increases the scope and the relevance of contactless payments. And then there has also been an upgrade of terminals, which is going on all the time. So, for example, in Norway, which is actually one of the most dramatic increases in contactless, the share of contactless transactions increased from 14% on a national basis in July 2019 to more than 70% 1 year later in July 2020. And this trend has been continuing. And as we have talked about, it's mostly to do with health, security, and safety. But if you move to the next slide, you will see that it's not all, just rosy with contactless payments. There are some challenges as well. we know that most consumers want to always or almost always pay with contactless cards. 77% of consumers said so. And this is also reflected in the general behavior in the marketplace. Why is it not even more? I think there are two factors which play. One of them is security concerns, because there are consumers, quite a lot of consumers, who have security concerns around contactless payment. In 2018, research found that it was 38% who had serious or very serious security concerns around contactless. And this number has increased to more than 50% by late 2020. And why is that so? It's because people are worried about misuse of cards. They're worried about lost and stolen cards and how they can be exploited. And also, some consumers are worried about skimming. And of course, as we will get back to, biometric payment cards resolves all these issues. So when asked, do you want a card that will eliminate transaction limits and be even more secure, 55% of consumers says yes, they want that, and they are willing to pay for it. The other challenge with contactless payment that I just wanted to highlight is that with contactless payment, you have the transaction limit. So if you want to pay more than the transaction limit, typically around 50 euros, you still have to touch the payment terminal. If you have an accumulated transaction value of some more than 150 euros, you also have to enter a PIN code. And finally, typically every fifth transaction that is non-authenticated has to be authenticated with a PIN code. And of course, with a biometric payment card, that is not necessary. But we'll get back to that.
Exactly. And what's so important at the end of the day is, as times change, technology really needs to meet the necessities of the customer, given the fact that security is always going to be prevalent and at the base. And so being able to offer your customers different values through different means is very important. And so we've seen a little bit the trend in the next couple of years. How about the next decade? What do we see by 2030? Mirko, can you share a little bit about how this trend will only be increasing as the time goes into 2030?
Yes, actually, our study showed results that are quite amazing, because we start this webinar talking about how COVID has changed the payment habits. However, contactless transaction is not about COVID, and actually we can see that it's actually a payment method, or especially an entry mode at the post level, that arrived to stay with us. I mean, the statistics are clear and quite impressive, because it is clear that contact transaction will grow in the next year. I mean, we know that from 2020 to 2025, we will see a growth of 82%. It's incredible. But let's say that we can associate this increase to the COVID boost effect. But look what happened between 2025 and 2030, that we hope that COVID is not be anymore around us, or much more controlled. And the growth is still be amazing. I mean, 61% of growth of the payment transaction. It's true that we can see that there are some regions where the increase is much more important. That is the case of Asia Pacific, because they have a culture that they're basically much more used to, maybe before also COVID, to use this kind of payment method. However, the results are cross-country. Actually, we can see that also in the African region, we will see an increase in Latin America, in the United States, in Europe. So this is clear. Contactless payment will be the most used payment method in the future. And also, this is why I will take something that Andres said, that today we cannot see the full potential of contactless transaction. And actually, I think that even this figure maybe are a little bit conservative and could be even better, because today we have an industry that's so used to use PIN code that, for example, they block the limit to pay with contactless transaction at the terminal level. So, for example, if I have my biometric card and I want to pay more than 50 euros in some countries, anyhow, the terminal will force me to use my PIN code to authenticate the transaction. But with biometric payment card, we don't need anymore the PIN code. So even I think these figures that are amazing are quite conservative, considering that we still having a lot of countries and a lot of regions that they are limiting the contactless possibility just because we are used to use PIN as a cardholder verification method.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting, as you say, Mirko, because at the end of the day, we see this acceleration. And as you say, this is very conservative. And I think meeting the needs of the market and that consumers have with technology is exactly where we have to be in terms of offering. And that's where the biometric card comes in with a slew of benefits. Andre, can you speak a bit about how the biometric card is meeting the needs and demands that we see given these trends?
Absolutely. I just wanted to comment that I totally agree with the forecast and the vision for the development over the next decade. In fact, I believe that by the end of this decade, contactless will be totally dominant. I mean, there will not be any contact-based payment left because there are so strong demands for it. There are so strong benefits with it. If we can solve the challenges, and with biometric payment cards, we can actually solve the problems of security and of transaction limits, creating a truly contact-free, not only a contactless experience. And that's why I actually believe that biometrics will be as ubiquitous in payment cards as they are today in mobile phones by the end of this decade. So what is then a biometric payment card? Well, a biometric payment card is a card where you have a sensor on the card, and you enroll your biometric data on the card before you use it the first time. So the data are directly entered onto the card. They are stored in a secure element there. And they don't ever leave the card. All the authentication happens on the card itself. There is no battery, so in order to run the authentication, power is being harvested from the payment terminal's NFC field. So it's actually transforming energy from the radio signals above the terminal into energy on the card in order to perform a live biometric authentication on the card itself. And then it just communicates to the terminal that this is the rightful owner of the card, and thereby it fully EMV authorizes a transaction so that it goes through no matter the transaction value, as if you had entered a PIN code.
That's fascinating, truly fascinating. And to see some of the benefits that you've mentioned in terms of this convenience going from contactless to contact-free, we see a slew of direct benefits that can have an altering effect in the end consumer's experience. Can you go over a couple of these as you've alluded to, Andre?
Sure. I mean, convenience has always been a big driver for consumer usage and preference, and also for biometric payment cards, because it enables contactless transactions above and below the transaction limit. But with a biometric payment card, you actually turn a contactless card into a contact-free card. So the benefits in convenience are still there. I would also like to highlight the security concerns, because like we have talked about, we need to both meet the customer needs and to address the concerns. And the security is a concern that is being resolved by a biometric payment card. And then, of course, there's the innovation factor, the coolness factor of having something new. But what has completely changed the scene for biometric payment cards and has meant that the demand and interest for these cards has skyrocketed, literally, that is the effects of COVID-19, the focus on hygiene and safety. And the good thing is that across the board here, biometric payment cards will meet the demands and address the concerns of consumers.
Exactly. And what's so important here is when we have a new technology that's introduced into the market, how fast can we get it into the customer's hands? Usually, when we're talking about a traditional model, it can take months to implement this. And by that time, it might be too late. So, having an omni-channel issuance where we can determine where, when, and how the cards are issued is just as important. Mirko, can you go over some of the benefits and what this model means for the banks in terms of efficiency and time to market?
Yes, actually, the thing is that today we are living a completely different era. I mean, there is not anymore the same industry than 10, 15 years ago. Our customers are different, are much more demanding, and they are looking for a completely different services. And today also with the current technology, I mean, using the state of the art of the technology doesn't make any sense to continue offering exactly the same services that let's say company in this industry have been offering the last decade. So today, in order to face this new challenge, because as I already discussed in the very beginning of this webinar, we are expecting an increase of the card issuing of about 32.5%. So how banks can face this challenge of personalize and bring this product to the customer, that there is actually a very important increase of the volume. So there is a logistic challenge to solve, but also not is just about that. It's also about how you can do it even better than in the past, how you can actually bring this new 32.5% increase of car directly to your customer hands. And this is why today we can solve this using a new kind of technology, cloud-based system, where we can integrate the bank easily. As you say in the very beginning, there is no anymore this story about a long project to integrate card processing system with the personalization process, integrate the key, the EMB profile, and so on. Today is much more easy. Using our cloud-based system, for example, it is possible to do all the EMB data preparation in a cloud-based platform, just using three data: PAN, cardholder name, and expiration date. So it's actually quite easy from the integration point of view. And because this is a cloud-based platform, then it's up to the banks where they want to personalize their product. So basically, it is as easy to send the card to be printed at the bank branch, or if it's a massive process, to the Central Personalization Bureau, or even more aggressive, and do it through a self-service kiosk. I mean, we have talked about COVID here and the need to be protected, and protection is for our customer, also for the employees at the bank. So it's much more better to protect everyone, to use a self-service way to onboard customer and print cards. So today we have equipment, we have kiosks capable to authenticate the user using the national ID document and authenticate them with biometric technique like fingerprint match or face matching. And then contactualize the customer using a strong signature process, and certificate generation on the flight for that. And then we can print the card. So basically, in this new era, we cannot continue conceiving the card issuing process as we have been done in the last 20 years. I mean, now it's all about instantaneity. It's all about real time. And most important thing also, because we cannot forget that, something that I mentioned in the beginning, that logistic. I mean, how we can bring all these cars as fast as we can Well, basically managing the way that we will contact the customer and the way that we'll give the product. So
Exactly.
if I have one system on the cloud and me as a bank, I can say, okay, this card I wanted to print it in this branch, or this group of card I need to process it in a central bureau, and all these customers they will print their card in our self-service kiosk at or co-branding partner. So today the options are unlimited, and we have the technology to offer to face the new way to see the card product for the next year. So,
Absolutely.
and this came with the benefit that basically, as I already say, the customer experience. I mean, it's not the same thing to give the card to the customer instantaneously or wait 5 days. I mean, if you can contactalize a customer right here, right now, please sign here, and here is your product, all the customer journey, because in the end, it's not just the customer experience during the printing process. This is basically an industrial process. The important thing is the customer journey, what the customer will do with a card. And if the way to approach to the customer is much more close, and we show them that we are here to offer him the best services we can, the loyalty that we will generate between the customer, the bank, and the product will increase. And this is why the statistics are clear and say that an instant issuance card have 32% more of card users during the first month rather than a central issuance card. So the customer experience is quite important, and this is one of the
And
main
that's
benefits.
yeah, and
And all,
that's I'm
yes,
sorry,
sir.
go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say, and
No,
that's amazing because at the end of the day, when we talk about these benefits, where we see that we're meeting the customers where they have to be, and as you can all probably see in Mirko's video stream, you can see the kiosk on his left-hand side, and that's amazing because in the small platform, you can have basically a bank branch that can operate up to 24/7. So you're talking about all these benefits that we see here in terms of efficiency, commercial potential, where the business can decide how they want to build their cases with this non-traditional form of omnichannel issuance. And so, as Mirko alluded to, in terms of the benefits that come with the flexibility and the total control, giving that control back to the bank so that if they want to emit a biometric card, they can, and they can have that time to market in a much quicker and efficient and transparent manner. That's where the importance comes, and that's where additional value comes in terms of giving the flexibility of letting the bank choose when, how, and where they want to issue their cards. And so,
also, Sean, we cannot
oh,
forget
go
one
ahead.
thing that's very important too. That from the commercial potential, it's not just about the technology; it's also the capacity that this technology offered to the bank to be much more aggressive at the moment to contactualize and try to bring more customers. It is true that there are some countries that the contactualization process of the mechanism that the bank has to try to attract customers are not so aggressive because it's a quite, let's say, a stable market with just few players and so on. But this is not the reality of the rest of the world. There's, in general, now we can see that the industry is turned in something completely different. With neobanks arriving, the competition is much more strong. So banks need to also attack this and try to have the same level of service. So now I can open my bank account through internet online instantaneously. So traditional banks cannot be out of this new era. So commercial
Correct.
potential is one of the main also point of this that make possible for traditional banks to compete with this new service level that neobanks are bringing to our industry.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank both of you for all your insights. I think we want to leave a little bit of time for some questions and answering. I want to give a big shout out to the team who has been answering in the chat, which has been quite active. So we have a couple questions here that I would like to ask both of you. to see how we can go ahead and proceed. So the first one talks specifically about the impact that a model like this could have in terms of adopting an omni-channel issuance model. How is the impact if a bank was interested in integrating this type of model? Mirko, I don't know if you want to go ahead and respond.
Yes, actually, it's a very good question because, in general, it's the first question that all the banks ask us. Okay, if I want to start to issue my card using your omni-channel services, how much time this will take? How much cost from the internal point of view? This will cost me integration time, associate a group of people just working in this project, and actually the answer is actually for the bank very easy because we just need three data, as I already say, cardholder name, PAN number, and expiration date. So there is not a lot of things to do. From the integration point of view is actually quite minimal. And because of this, we can start to run the services very, very fast, much more faster than traditional way to print card. Because also, based on this platform, cloud-based platform, we already have all the infrastructure already available for all the regions. So it's just branch the card processing system just to get these three data, and that's it. The rest is just the deployment of all the different issuing points. So for me, the answer is very clear. The impact from the bank point of view are not important. Actually, there are just a few stuff to do. It's not a lot of work. The implementation is much more faster than traditional issuance services, and the idea is that actually, because if we are talking about offer a card instantaneously and as fast as is possible, also from our side, we are trying to do exactly the same thing with the customer. I mean, the platform must be developed to offer us services easy to be integrated, to put in place the service as fast as we can.
Exactly. Going here through the chat, I see Said asked about instant issuance specifically with the biometric cards. I see that we are offering this on a technological level. And so, if a bank was interested in offering this for their customers, could they go ahead and offer the biometric cards in an instant issuance model?
Totally. I will because it's about issue. I will explain, but then Andre, I will give you time if you want to add some technical details too. But I will take the chance to answer this. The answer is total. Actually, we can print without any issue and a biometric payment card based on these omni-channel services. That means that we can print in a central personalization bureau, also in a kiosk like the one that I have here just beside me, or in an instant issuance machine installed at the branches. Because in the end, I mean, the biometric card is an EMB card that is running an operative system based on Java card, using the applets basically defined by the international payment schemes. So for us, it's personalized in another Java card with another functionality that is the payment based on a biometric authentication. And even the enrollment of the fingerprint is something that we can do instantaneously, because, for example, in the kiosk, we have a contactless reader that can polarize the chip to turn it on and start the enrollment process, because this is also something important that maybe Andre can explain more. But the payment brands are demanding that the enrollment of the fingerprint must be done directly on the card. So me as a customer, I need to enroll my fingerprint directly, and it's not something that we will perform during the card personalization. So it's a step that we must do after the card has been personalized. But in the end, we just need to activate the card and activate the enrollment process. So we can do it easily in an instant issuance manner using another RFID reader.
Andre, you want to add anything in terms of being able to enroll or being able to offer this in an instant manner to the customer?
Well, at Swipe, we support all kinds of enrollment. It can be at home, it can be at the kiosk, it can be in branch. Any form of enrollment, we will support. What I would like to say is that I'm just super excited about Mirko's and BY's Pay's focus on customer experience and customer journey. It's so close to my heart. And I feel that both your instant issuance offering and biometric payment cards per se are really strong testaments to that focus. I am, based on the consumer research that I've done and that we've done at Swipe, we are very confident that biometric payment cards will help consumers, like I said, to meet their demands and to address their concerns, and thereby to uplift loyalty among consumers that they have, their own customers, to accelerate new customer acquisition because consumers really want this product, and also to open up totally new revenue streams because people are willing to pay for it. They want to pay for it because they want access to these cards. And in combination with instant issuance, etc., you're offering a fantastic proposition to your customers, increasing their ROI, helping them to meet the customer's demands.
Absolutely. And being able to, at the end, offer the technology necessary to improve the customer experience end to end is where we are at our heart. And it's so important to see when we look at the market, all these new trends that are being said, one of them being, for example, cloud issuance. That as you see, issuance as a service or issuance from the cloud, that's something that today is one of the trends that is pushing forward quite aggressively. Mirko, can you speak a little bit about the benefits of cloud issuance that can tie exactly to what we're speaking about, the experience and making everything more flexible at the end?
Yeah, actually, there are several ones. So actually, I can spend the rest of the evening talking about benefit to use a cloud-based platform for card issuance. So I just will talk about the most important one. The first one is basically the capacity. When you have this infrastructure already put on place, you can integrate banks around the world easily because you have an infrastructure ready to increase your capacity. I mean, if you need more capacity for processing even more card, you can do it just in about minutes. You have everything already customized to offer services based on a low impact to your customer. I mean, it's a full platform ready to be integrated and expand the services to be deployed everywhere. So in the end, it's the change of the way to see the personalization and the card processing that in the past we have several places processing locally and doing everything isolated. Now what we are doing is concentrate all this capacity, all this data processing capacity in one point and manage all the processing cycle to then decide where you want to print your card. So basically, now the banks are not, let's say, attached or forced to stay with one way to personalize the product. With the cloud-based system, they are the ones who are managing the processing because we put in place a platform that allowed them to process all the data and then decide what to do with it. I mean, today they need to send the person 5 to the person 1, then to the person 2, then to the person 3, and each one are replicating the process of data treatment, EMB, blah, blah, and doing the personalization later. Now, it is the bank who decide one day, you know what? And now I prefer to personalize the person seat. No problem. Now I want instant issuance everywhere. No problem. It's just about deployment of the infrastructure. because the data processing is centralized. So now the bank is governing the issuance process, because in the past it was not the case. They just send the file to the one who will personalize the card, and then the bank was completely isolated of the process. Now it's the opposite. It's the bank, the one who say what to do and how to do the issuance process. And this is because this cloud-based architecture that is capable to integrate multiple banks everywhere, and put in place a mechanism to manage the whole car life cycle, from the car that the register that we receive to personalize, the car that is in stock, until the car is activated.
Really seeing a level of efficiency that isn't present today, and that will allow, to, as you say, Mirko, to control everything from a centrally governed location. Now, I think we have time for one more question, and this question will apply for both of you, so it's going to be very interesting. One thing that keeps on coming up is, does the size of the bank matter in terms of the model, in terms of being able to offer biometric cards? And so I'll give each of you about a minute to go ahead and respond in terms of, can any bank, big or small, go ahead and adapt this model, this technology? Andre, if you want, you can start in terms of the biometric card.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Not at all. So there is no limitation either to the upside or downside when it comes to size of bank to handle biometric payment cards. We are currently in dialogue with about 360 banks in the world, some of the largest banks and some of the smaller banks. And, biometric payment cards are equally interesting for both. We used to have an expectation that biometric payment cards were mostly for high net worth individuals and corporate cards only. But what we are seeing is that actually, due to many of the effects we have talked about with COVID-19, this is actually a mass market proposition. And it also is relevant for all kinds of banks.
Perfect. Very, very well said. Mirko, we'd like to go ahead and
Yeah.
speak a little bit about the model, how it can adapt to different bank sizes.
Exactly. I mean, I know that we are running out of time, so my answer is quite clear and very straightforward. There is no size limitation. The service is actually designed to fulfill the need of all the banks. Doesn't matter the size. Actually, this is the interesting thing of the cloud-based offer, because we are centralizing the calcul capacity, and now we can actually achieve at a different scale to offer service to every bank. Doesn't matter the size.
Okay. And that's when we talk about at the end flexibility, putting these technologies into the hands of the consumers, allowing banks to have complete control. That's what our proposition is. Well, I want to thank everyone for participating today. It's been very insightful. I want to thank Mirko as well as Andre for giving all their opinions about this data and where the market is heading to. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in from around the world to make this a very successful webinar. I hope all of you have learned pretty much a lot about what we've spoken. If you guys have any questions about anything that was spoken today in the webinar, you can reach out to either Andre or Mirko through our LinkedIn platforms. You can follow us in BWise Pay as well as Swipe. And we'll be sending out as well a survey to go ahead and follow up with certain questions if you guys have any. But thank you all so much again for taking the time and tuning in. And we hope to see you again in the next webinar, in the next space that we'll have in the near future. So thank you so much, Mirko, Andre, and thank you so much to the team who made this possible. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you very much for all the participants of this webinar.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.